blistering starts to a tennis match.
Shakespeare got it wrong. It wasn't King Lear. It's King Lear.
LeBron James with no regard for human.
Yuvraj Singh finishes things off on style.
This is a News Laundry podcast, and you're listening to NL Playoffs.
Hello, welcome to NL Playoffs. My name is Gowtham. I have with me my co-host Aniketh. Aniketh, say namaste.
Hello world.
This is episode 15. Aniketh, we are at another 5 multiples. So we've officially crossed the 2-week episode number. We are recording this on the 26th of February at around 9:15 a.m. India time. Happy 10 years to News Laundry. I don't think we got a chance to say this yet. It's been 10 years since News Laundry was born. So congratulations to the whole team. I know Aniketh and me are extremely delighted to be a very, very, very small part of this organization with this podcast. But I've seen the organization grow from humble beginnings all those years ago to what it is now.
The way News Laundry started and the game they're playing is typically called the infinite game, right? So it's playing the game for the extremely long run where the odds are stacked against you, where people initially say it can't be done, and then you show them how it can be done. And there is a larger value system associated with not taking advertising. So you're playing what is called the infinite game, and you're changing the rules, right? Because there are no rules in an infinite game.
Aniketh, how are you doing? And how has your sports weeks been the last 2 or 3 weeks here?
So we're counting every episode, aren't we, Gautam?
Oh, I am counting for sure.
Yeah. I've been doing all right, as good as you can do in these crazy times. So the sports week has been rather interesting because a lot of things are happening on different fronts, but nevertheless, sports keeps us engaged, so we have something to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. Just before we go through the headlines, I know which you'll do in a little bit. I just want to talk about the role of crowd noise, Aniket. You know how it's different in different sports, right? So when you see most of the other games, like let's say cricket, let's say football, let's say pick anything. American football or basketball, there's always this crowd noise. There's always people shouting, yelling. If you're playing basketball, the crowd is trying to distract you from behind the backboard. If it's cricket, there's always noise, right? While in tennis or golf, for that matter, people encourage you, or people kind of look down upon you if you make even a slight noise, or if you cheer anybody in the middle of a point or in the middle of a golf swing, right? Now, I understand. I know Abhijit brought this up too, which was very interesting, where he said the margin of error is very little when it comes to tennis or golf for that matter, because you're aiming at a particular hole, or the margins are very, very thin when it comes to tennis because you have to stay within the lines when you're hitting a shot. I don't know if I agree with that. I just want to get your thoughts on it, because even if it's cricket, the margin of error is pretty low if you're facing a 150 kilometers per hour Brett Lee or Shoaib Akhtar, right? If you're a batsman and you still have a lot of noise surrounding you. Or even, let's say, if you're taking a penalty kick at the 93rd minute to win a World Cup final, right? You still have a lot of noise coming through. The still margin of error is pretty low. So do you think there is a bit of a double standard when it comes to different sports with crowd noise?
Actually, it's a good question, and my initial response was maybe yes, but then thinking slightly deeply about it, and I'm thinking just now I got your question. So I'd like to categorize crowd noise in 2 varieties, right? One is like team sport, and the other is individual sport. So when you say team sport, you mean cricket, basketball, football, and the other sports. And then you have individual sports like tennis, badminton, golf, table tennis. The difference I see is in a team sport, in general, there is some sort of noise going around anyways that's generated by the players itself, and then there's a crowd too. And typically what happens is in these team sports, the arena is huge, right? Whereas in a sport like badminton or table tennis or tennis, even golf for that matter, you're really close to the players. And here's where the point you brought up comes into play, where the margin of error is so close, because lot of these sports rely on calls, right? So there's a call for the ball being inside or outside, and the calls are made by the linesman. However, in team sport, it's not that close, right? If a ball in the football goes out of bounds, it's not a point conceded or anything. Whereas here, if someone from the audience creates a distraction or calls for an out, and then the player can mistake it for actually the linesman making. So, I'd like to categorize it in these. In my head, I split it this way. So I try to justify why it's important, and I do believe it's important because, as you saw in the Australian Open too, that a crowd and home, and it's well understood in sports literature, sports science literature, that home crowd actually has an effect on how a team or a player actually performs, and we've seen it in numerous different instances. So I'd like to classify it as, yes, it's important, and I try to delineate it as team sport and individual sport. Maybe you can do a better job with it, but as of now, with my thinking cap on, this is the only kind of way I'm trying to process that information and why it's important.
I think, yeah, I know I caught you a little off guard there. Every sports has its own ambience, so that is there. But I see what you're saying, but I honestly think that is a little overrated, the crowd noise or people getting distracted, because I think it's just how the players are conditioned when they're starting to play from the beginning, right? You when you're playing when you're playing a tennis game, you're just taught that there's this or you're just conditioned in a way that there is not going to be any background noise as such. Whereas if you're playing in the Maidans of India, where you're playing cricket, right, or if you're playing anywhere in the world for that matter, I also don't think I quite agree with your the crowd being close to the arena comment, because you always see. Let's say if you take basketball, the crowd is right there. You have courtside seats. If you take football, for that matter, football is like American football. Sorry, you always have people very close to the touch line, making a hell of noise. But I think it's just how individual.
So
individual
I'd like
sport
to
is there,
I'd like to clarify my point, right? So I don't say the distance in isolation, but the distance with the sport being an individual sport and the margin of error. So it's like a mix of these three. So for example, in basketball, you'll see a ball being called out and stuff like that. So we understand that it is it's also the referee who finally makes the call, but these calls don't impact the player because they look out for a whistle, right? So what you're looking out for is a whistle, which is a very now you can make the counter argument, say that what if somebody whistles in the arena, which is fair enough. But then in my limited point is that when you have sports where the margin of error, and like you said, it also goes back to the ancestry of that sport, like how that sport has been played over the years. Like for example, golf, as you always respect, right? You don't and I remember watching this in one of the Tiger Woods documentaries, is that his dad used to actually juggle coins in his pocket while Tiger was as a kid practicing, and just to make sure that he would be zoned in when the time actually got tough and when he was playing. So I think this is what we call a multi-variable problem, right? So there are too many things that happen here. It goes from the ancestry of how the sport is being played to modern regulations coming in. And I am not a stickler for one or the other. I think sports should evolve. And rules have changed in a lot of sports. Like we have badminton, how the point system has changed. You see offside rules continuously being changed in football. So I'm totally of the opinion that these regulations should change, and we should make this more broader and more applicable.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, but I think, as you said, the ancestry of sport or the origins of sport has a lot to do with these things, because I believe it's just how the players are conditioned to play. It depends. I think if a game of tennis was always played with a lot of crowd noise in the background, I think they would have been totally fine today with background noise. But now you see, I remember Roger Federer shouting at the crowd once, saying "shut up," and in the heat of the battle, you see all of these. You can always see this audience saying or shushing the crowd when they're speaking just before a player serves, and so on. And also, home and away crowd plays a very vital role, right? So, which is why I'm not a big fan of the Champions League taking away the away goals rule either. I really like that variable, but I mean it's not there anymore. I think we discussed this a few episodes ago, if the taking away the away goal rule was good or bad, but well, we have to live with no away goals rule anymore.
It's really sad though, right? Because it has been well documented in sports literature, at least, that
Yeah.
playing away has a visible impact, and the impact has been statistically studied in various different body of work. So yeah, it's interesting. It's sad that Champions League has gone ahead and done that, but
Yeah, because playing at Anfield is a different beast. Playing at Galatasaray's home is a different beast than playing anywhere else in the world. So it's going to be. I don't know if I like that rule or not, but yeah. But anyway, I think we should get to the headlines. We've spoken enough. Let's get straight into it, Aniketh.
a few things happening. Let's start with cricket. So the Indian women team had a tour of New Zealand, and the series ends in a 5-1 loss to India.
That is an amazing innings from Mealy Kerr. New Zealand pull off a difficult chase and they win by 3 wickets here in Queenstown.
So India won the last game by 6 wickets, and Smriti Mandhana and Harmanpreet Kaur scored 71 and 63 respectively. So it was a 5 ODI game, which I think we had. The final game was like a saving grace, I think, where we took one back. Then the men's Indian cricket team has
By the way,
claimed
real quick on that. Sorry, Aniket. The Women's World Cup is coming up on the beginning on the 4th of March. So that is why this is kind of a lead up to that Women's World Cup. So we'll keep a close eye on that and hopefully have somebody on once the World Cup gets done here.
So like I said, the Indians men team reclaimed the top spot in ICC T20 international team rankings, riding on their 3-0 series sweep over West Indies at home. And now Rohit Sharma is the new test captain, and they're heading to Sri Lanka, the Indian cricket team. And,
no, Sri Lanka is home. Sri Lanka is coming home.
But what we do know is that Pujara and Rahane have been dropped, and there is a saga going on with Wriddhiman Saha. So you've told me about this. I've read briefly about it, but I'll let you tell the listeners a little bit more as to what's actually happening and what's going on.
Yeah, we will talk about it once we finish up with the headlines, Aniket. I kind of want to cover it in just a little more detail.
Sure. So, young Praggnanandhaa stunts Magnus Carlsen, who is world number 1 and also considered a prodigy, was beaten by an Indian 16-year-old kid. And I saw the highlights of the chess game. It was a game played on Zoom. Yeah. And I also saw some analysis happening, and it was fun to watch, and how nonchalant our Indian youngster was when he actually beat Magnus Carlsen, because Magnus Carlsen actually retired from the game, which in some sense is considered conceding defeat. And Magnus Carlsen just goes offline on Zoom, and then the Indian youngster is just sitting with his hand over his jaw, so calm, composed, and no overwhelming feeling. So it was very interesting, and I felt very proud seeing that.
Yeah, as soon as I saw not the name but how Praggnanandhaa looked like, I remember this video, okay, because I definitely remember that face. He was playing against Vishwanathan Anand, okay. It was in some kind of tournament. There is this video I remember, because I think I might have watched this a couple of years ago or something. He was obviously really young then. He's now 16, so he must have been, 13 or 12. So he's playing this game against Anand. They're just playing and playing. I think it ended up in a draw or something because they shook hands, or I don't know, because I really don't follow the vagaries of chess and chess matches and so on. But okay, they shake hands. But I could, as you said, he was definitely nonchalant, man. He's not reacting, or he's not overwhelmed, or he's not intimidated by anybody. So once the game finishes, he's looking at the board, and then he speaks to Anand. Both of them are Tamilians anyway, so they're just speaking, and he's like, yeah, what did you do here? And Anand is kind of responding in kind, just saying what he did and what his thinking was behind a particular move. So it was very interesting to see him back then, and all of a sudden I see him now, and he's beating Magnus Carlsen. So it's very interesting.
It was indeed, and I think a lot of people were very proud. So we had Sachin Tendulkar and the Prime Minister of India tweeting about this. So that definitely made headlines. And then the Dubai Tennis Championship also happened. So Jiří Veselý beat Novak Djokovic at the Dubai Open. And that basically led to Novak Djokovic conceding his number one spot, and Daniel Medvedev is now officially world number one. So, did you get to see that match or the highlights?
No, I just saw that Djokovic. I saw the highlights of, I think, a previous game, right? Oh, he was playing Lorenzo Musetti. I saw the highlights of that. I saw that, okay, Djokovic is back in Dubai and he's wearing green and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, is it surprising that Djokovic got beaten after that prolonged break? That's not surprising at all. So, again, it will be interesting. No word yet on what his status is going to be at Roland Garros. So we'll see what happens on that front.
Yeah,
but
and it's
and
also
made it clear that sorry, my bad. And there was this BBC interview about on Novak Djokovic, and where he was talking to this BBC guy, and he pretty much flat out said, "Look, if there is a vaccine mandate for Grand Slams, I'm not going to play." So he's taken a stand. It's clear now. We've kind of known all along that he's not taken the vaccine, which he kind of made it obvious now, but he said he's not going to play Grand Slam if a vaccine mandate is on. So it remains to be seen whether any of these tournaments make any kinds of exceptions.
So what's very interesting is that his stand is more nuanced, is what I understood. So he's not an anti-vaxxer because he's got a vaccine as a kid and different other vaccinations. But he seems to have reservations about being forced to take this particular COVID vaccine. I'm not defending him, but just stating his stance on what he currently has to say. So, with that being said, another thing interesting I read was this is the second time Vasilev was actually playing Djokovic, and the first time was 6 years back, I think at an ATP tournament, and both times Yuri Vasilev has beaten Novak Djokovic, so it's very interesting.
So he's unbeaten against Djokovic?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
From there, we go to inflection point in world history, Gautham. So, Vladimir Putin has officially invaded Ukraine, and I think depending on which time zone you are in, this is either the third day or the second day on where you are of the war that has been declared on Ukraine. So, that has had rippling effects all around the world in different forms. So, the stock markets are plummeting. And they're going up and down, seesawing. There's a lot of uncertainty, oil prices, so there's economic damage. The ripple effects are also been felt in the world of sports, so like we've spoken earlier, sports is a part of our society, and all these things actually have an effect on how the sporting world conducts itself. So a lot of interesting things have happened. Do you want to share your thoughts about this, and How do you feel when you heard about this?
Anybody would be lying if they said they were not expecting a war, because it's been in the works, right? They've been talking about it, and then it finally happened. Obviously,
I mean, just to add to that, sorry for interjecting, but maybe I was naive, but I believed, a small part of me believed that maybe this would not go to a full-fledged war. I was like, oh, maybe this is bravado and, playing chess, trying to intimidate your opposition. But I genuinely, honestly did not expect it to. I didn't know war was so easy in today's, in 2022. Guys, we're in 2022. So I didn't know that, you could just declare war and nothing would happen, So it's interesting.
I mean, as unprovoked as this was, when you consider it from a Ukrainian point of view, as dictatorial and as Putin-esque as you can get with Vladimir Putin. I think, I just don't want to talk geopolitics all around here, but I think Putin had little choice but to go to war in a way, because let me make it clear that I'm not sympathizing in any way with Russia or Putin, because I think what Putin is doing right now with Ukraine is just awful. But I think Russia had no choice but to go to war, or at least threaten a war, because of the whole NATO thing and Ukraine wanting to become part of NATO, which means that an important port will go to the Western Hemisphere, so to speak, and which would be bad for Russia and the trade. So anyway, I don't want to get into all of that. Having said that, we are clearly seeing the consequences now, where Russia is invading Ukraine, and I think Putin yesterday has called for removing the leadership of Ukraine. So it's the war is full on now, and now we are seeing its ripple effects throughout the sporting world. We saw that the Champions League final, UEFA has acted and said that the Champions League final that was going to be held in St. Petersburg this year is now going to move. It's going to move to Paris, I think, Stade de France, moving there. So that is there. They're now, I think Manchester United announced yesterday that they're moving away from its partnership with Aeroflot, which is a Russian airline. So that's interesting to see. So we are seeing all these players also taking a stand. Go ahead, Aniket.
So even UEFA has, I think they're renewing they're rechecking their sponsorship with Gazprom, which is closely related to the Russian, bureaucracy or the government right now. So that's again in the works. The Ukraine Premier League, which was actually supposed to start on Friday, has now been pushed for about 30 days, and then a lot of the players have been wanting to go back to their homeland, and there's been some sort of confusion going on. So I think that's unfortunate but collateral damage of war. So you have players stuck there. But what's interesting is FIFA has come out saying that Ukraine and Russia will now play in neutral zones, so they will not be in neutral stadiums. Sorry. Yeah. So and what's interesting is that they continue to play. So and then I think the game coming up now is with Poland. I think so. Poland was supposed to travel to Moscow, and that's going to be held in a neutral stadium.
Now, I'd be extremely surprised if FIFA took a stand and said or condemned in any way that the Russia is invading Ukraine, because just judging by the track record that FIFA has, I don't think it really cares about any kinds of human rights violations or war or anything like that. So I'll be extremely surprised if they took a stand of some kind. I mean, FIFA is just an awful organization, to be honest with you, at least in my opinion.
For sure, I'm not going to defend FIFA here, but also I like to bring this point up that can you punish the players for what the government is actually doing, right? It's essentially a dictatorship or autocracy or whatever you want to call it, and for decisions that somebody is making on the top, should the players be punished? Because we've seen a lot of Russian players and athletes come out and talk against the war, but I don't know, it's an open question. Is it fair to ban Russian team from playing because the government has declared to go on a war? So that's an interesting question.
But yeah, the flip side to that is that I don't know if they've called off or they've postponed the playoff match against between Ukraine and Scotland, right? If they would have said, let's postpone the Ukraine-Scotland game, I can understand that. But again, it's just FIFA again just having cold feet or just dragging their feet and just not saying anything. That's typical FIFA. But I'm kind of glad that UEFA has acted on it, but we'll see in the future. It all comes down to money with these organizations, right? So it all comes down to what they will lose if they speak up on something. So I will, as I said, I'm not surprised if FIFA or the likes of IOC don't say anything.
Yeah, and what's interesting is UEFA is so the Gazprom deal apparently is roughly around $40 million a year. So that's a huge sum, and they're revisiting that. So both lawyers from both the teams are actually talking it out, and it seems like it's going to be cancelled. We don't know, but we'll keep an eye on that story. And as we said, the Russian tennis player Andrei Rublev writes "No war, please" on a camera after winning a tennis match. So, case in point that there are Russian people out there who are actually protesting and athletes who believe that maybe this war is not just. So. Yeah, it is what it is. That's the world we are in today.
It is very, very. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to take a stand against your own country, which I think it's extremely brave on somebody's part to take a stand. Because you saw in the US, you see Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, and we see all of these statements. Well, they're still few and far in between, but you still see some of these athletes taking a stand with the Black Lives Matter movement, for example, or Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, or Even in I think football still continues to take the knee before kickoff, which I think now has become a little bit of a symbolic gesture than anything else. But it's very heartening to see all these athletes take a stand. I know Pep Guardiola came out and said that it's an unjust war, and he has Zinchenko on his team, who is Ukrainian. So it's good to see. It will be interesting to see if Roman Abramovich says anything. I doubt if he says anything, because he is in the middle of. He's literally what is he called? I forget the term. He's not an autocrat.
He's an oligarch.
Oligarch.
He's an oligarch.
That's the word.
Yep.
He's a Russian oligarch. So he's literally with I wouldn't say hand in glove with the Russian government, but at least he has the Russian government has a lot to say with what he does. So I doubt if he would take any stand.
Yeah, and like you said, I noticed one thing though, and this was an article I found in the week, and we'll add in our show notes, is that there is an interesting tie between Russia and the Olympics. So I found this very interesting because in 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, it occurred just after the Winter Olympics in Sochi. Right, so after these Winter Olympics were wrapped up in 2014, that's when the annexation happened. In 2008, Russia invaded Georgia when the Summer Olympics were happening. And now you have the Winter Olympics in China that have just concluded, and there is talk about how Russia strategically waited for this to actually end. These are just rumors.
Really?
I don't know if but the fact is there is now you can so there is something to do with Russia annexing and invading and the Olympics related here. 3, like I think Shekhar Gupta says, 3 make a straight line. So here are 3 data points, and you can join them however you want. Yeah.
And we've also seen, I think Robert Lewandowski came out and stood in support of Ukraine. So you're seeing a lot of these athletes. In the world of Formula 1, I think Vettel was the first guy who said he's probably not going to participate. And then late last night or yesterday, I think it was last night that the Formula 1 FIA, the organization, came out with a statement and said it's going to be quote-unquote impossible to hold a Grand Prix in Russia under the current circumstances.
I should not go. I will not go. I think it's wrong to race in the country. I'm sorry for the people, innocent people that are losing their lives, that are getting killed for stupid reasons, and a very, very strange and mad leadership. So I'm sure that's something that we will talk about. But as I said, on behalf of GPDA, we haven't come together yet. But personally, I'm just so shocked and sad to see what's going on.
And then also Haas, the F1 team, which had sponsorship from Uralkali, which is also a Russian company. So they've taken out their branding on the car. So they're now driving without that. Like we said, this has impacted the world. This particular event, everyone is speaking up for what they believe in, which is good. But I did want to bring a small point to distinguish between what you mentioned was Colin Kaepernick speaking and here Andrei Rublev speaking, is that in USA, I think you can still get away speaking anything. It's a different
Literally
story
anything.
in Russia. Yeah, and it's a completely different story in Russia. So a little bit of more respect for people who speak in tough situations where talking can only get you into trouble. So
100%
with that
sure.
being said, so let's talk about F1. Formula 1. So you brought that up because Formula 1, like you said, the new season has started in the sense the testing in Barcelona at the Circuit de Barcelona has started. So there was 3 days of testing. All teams have come around with the new cars because these cars are now for the 2022 regulation. So there have been a lot of changes in the cars, and it was very interesting, Gautham. I don't know if you followed, but I was nerding out on this because there is engineering involved in the design of these cars, and then there is sport, high performance athletes involved. So it's a very beautiful intersection of 2 things I really love, that is science and athletics. So
I definitely did not nerd out on this, but I definitely I saw that the cars were redesigned, so they look pretty cool. And the other cool thing I saw was, I think it was Alfa Romeo who came out with a camouflaged car design, so that was very nice. Other than that, I'll leave the engineering and design to you, Aniketh.
So I think the Alfa Romeos have not come out with the livery yet, so that's why they are a camouflage, I think. I am not sure if they're going to go... I don't know. I'm going to check on this and get back to you, but I think they're going to come out with their livery and it's going to change. I don't think they're going to race a
I hope
camouflage.
it stays camouflage. That looked pretty cool.
It did. So with that being said, the new regulations, let's talk a little bit about this. I wanted to talk about this. So the cars now are being redesigned, and there are a lot of reasons why they're going. One of the main drives is towards sustainability, right? So these cars typically have been extremely poor on the carbon footprint that they have, right? So there's a lot of emissions involved. So now the fuel will be much better and hopefully to a step towards sustainability. What's interesting as well is that these cars are now designed to promote better racing, because we know previously you had the DRS that was bought in because following one car very closely became a challenge, and the reason is that it's a lot of fluid mechanics, and then there is a lot of drag that develops and you cannot closely follow. But now these cars have been pushed slightly closer to the ground, which means that there's a larger downforce involved. And because of this, now they're hoping, so there's testing going on, nothing is sure, but they're hoping there'll be better racing. And a lot of drivers like Charles Leclerc and Pierre Gasly have spoken about, they see the difference. But the true difference will only be seen when you're on the track, because right now everyone's sandbagging, trying to show that, they're not doing that great, running on low fuel and stuff like that. So no one wants to show what they have right now. So everyone's playing it safe.
Okay.
And with that being said, what's interesting is that because of this new redesign that we spoke about, and cars are now much closer to the ground, there's an effect called porpoising that we're noticing. So this is a new word I learned, but it's basically porpoises are mammals that actually swim. They basically come out of the water like a dolphin and go back. So there's this up and down swing. And what happens is the same thing happens with this car, where when you're driving, because the car is now designed as an upside down airplane wing, it creates a huge downforce. So your car is basically being sucked to the floor, and then when you hit the floor, that air or the fluid mechanics is disturbed and you bounce up, and then eventually what happens is your head is like bobbing up and down and the whole car is like going up like a yo-yo. So this is beautiful to see, but extremely dangerous, and I say beautiful with beautiful in the scientific perspective as to why this is happening, and the aerodynamics that are involved is really cool. So this is some effects that a lot of teams have been noticing now, and the goal is going to be try and sort this out. If you can actually improve your designs to avoid this, because it has a lot of challenges to the driver in terms of visibility, and also it could be very dangerous. If this happens at high speeds, you're at a corner and you hit a bump on a corner, you could just be going off. And at those speeds, it's always dangerous. So this is something I noticed and I thought was really cool.
Yeah, as I said, the only thing I noticed and found to be cool was that it had a new design. The new design looks good of the car, and obviously all these colors look pretty good. They do. I mean, Formula 1 does a great job with branding and showing stuff, so which is always great. But yeah, I don't have much to add on that other than to say that I'm really looking forward to the new F1 season, and also looking forward to the new season of Drive to Survive, which I'm going to recommend at the end. So
damn it, you stole my recommendation.
I just remembered that it was coming up. So yeah, we should do that. Let's move on to some football headlines, Aniketh.
Sure. So interesting things happening in the world of football. So the US women's national team wins a 6-year battle for equal pay, right? So there was this whole I think anyone who's following sports and the women's national team and the men's national team, the women's national team started with 5 players actually, registering a complaint for not being equally paid. because the women's football team in the United States has been far more successful than the men's team. And what they realized is that even though they were more successful, they were not getting the same pay and the same appearance fees. So they started with 5 players. So there was Hope Solo, Carly Lloyd, Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe, and Becky Sorbonne. So it started with them, and then this led to them suing the US Soccer Federation, and then it was a 6-year-old battle. And my recommendation would be a New York Times article that basically timelines this and what actually happened. So it basically talks about how post-career plans and initiatives for women to grow in this game as well. So basically they're talking about like how you can take care of your athletes after they hang their boots up as well.
US soccer has been badly run for a number of years now. There has been a change of leadership recently, but I think there was this Indian guy or Indian origin guy who was heading the US Soccer Federation, and he got terrible press, and it's been let's say he's not been looked at kindly by anybody in the soccer world in the United States. I think there was a change of leadership there. Hope Solo, I think, headed the effort initially. And as you said, clearly, if you are living in the US, you know that the women's team is by far more successful and more popular than their male counterparts. So this was coming anyway. So it's I'm glad to see that. I mean, once US soccer settles, you know that means they're conceding defeat. It's like Magnus Carlsen shaking or going off Zoom, right? So it's definitely good to see. I think there's still the next stage is the men's and the women's team are playing under expired separate contracts, so the negotiations are ongoing. So I'm sure because of this lawsuit, the women's team will come out better this time around with the negotiations end. So yeah, we'll see what happens there, but this is definitely a welcome sign.
For sure. And I think the Daily Show with Hassan Minhaj had done a segment on this equal pay for women. So they spoke to athletes of the women's US soccer team. All the recommendations are going right in the start here. So, but I would recommend.
Did you like that show with Hassan Minhaj on Netflix? Aniket? I thought it was a little show.
Patriot Act, you mean? The Patriot Act.
The Patriot Act, that's the one. Yes.
Yeah. I watched a few episodes, but I really liked the Daily Show with Trevor Noah.
Yeah.
So Hassan Minhaj was a part of that, and he did a couple of really good interviews as a segment of that show. So I like Hassan Minhaj. I was not a crazy fan about Patriot Act or anything. I thought it was okay, like nothing too great. Like
yeah, I thought he was trying to appear a little too woke and little too I don't know, he was trying to do a lot of things there which was kind of distracted to me. But anyway, that's a bit of a sidebar there. So yeah, the Champions League is ongoing, Aniket. So I watched a couple of games. I watched Paris Saint-Germain play Real Madrid. That was a decent game to watch last week. Mbappe scored a beautiful goal. He just split the double team and just scored as if it was like a basketball play. It was great to see. I watched Man United play Atletico Madrid the other day. A lot of mixed emotions watching that game.
I wanted your thoughts on that.
Okay,
so let's
right,
pause and get your thoughts. You deconstruct the game for us, please, because I have a lot of questions.
Okay, yeah. So Manchester United was playing a round of 16 game against Atletico Madrid in Madrid. So they started off in such a poor fashion. The first half was just an eyesore. I wanted to gouge my eyes out watching that game because every time United had the ball, I was sure that they were going to lose it. Whenever Pogba had the ball, I was 100% sure he was going to lose it. Every time Rashford had the ball, I was so confident that he was going to make the wrong decision at all times, that he ended up doing the exact same thing. Rashford, I think, is just woefully out of form at the moment. He has some goals, by the way, in the recent past, but don't let that mislead you in any kind of in any fashion, because Rashford is just out of touch very badly, man. It's really bad. Manchester United did not have a single touch in the box in the whole of the first half. Atletico were just playing a classic Atletico game. They got the early goal in. Ja Felix, I think, is an amazing player to watch.
That was a good header. Like,
it was an excellent
diving
header.
Yeah.
Nobody had any chance. Brilliant cross, but even better header. But he just had a beautiful, beautiful game. They got the early goal in. They were pressing everybody in the midfield. Pogba was just in sixes and sevens, as they say. It was just awful to watch him play, man. He never makes the short pass. He never makes the obvious pass. He keeps the ball that much longer, and he invariably ends up getting tackled and falling to the ground and losing the ball and just shouting, which is awful to see. Ronaldo had barely any touches. He was just a lonely guy in the centre forward position. Jadon Sancho was again nowhere to be seen. They were just sniffing out all of these midfield possessions. The only people who had some kind of breathing space were the defenders. And now, if you look at the defenders, Varane had an awful first half. He was making all kinds of bad passes. He couldn't even make a small pass. It was like any other midfielder. Nobody could buy a pass, but Varane was just so switched off. I felt like Victor Lindelof started and he was playing right back. I don't know why that happened. Victor Lindelof does not have a lot of pace. You had Aaron Wan-Bissaka on the bench. I think he's a really good right back, but he was there. He was on the bench, so Lindelof was struggling against their left winger. So yeah, awful first half, and then they come back in the second half. They kind of get some kind of semblance of control. Bruno Fernandes had an uncharacteristically awful first half too. He was not able to make any kind of pass. Every pass that he was making was resulting in a loss of possession. I think Manchester United still managed to have about 65% of possession, which is typical of Atletico Madrid because they're really not a possession-based team. So they come back in the second half. They get some kind of control back. They make a few substitutions. They actually make they have two fullbacks coming in with Matic. So not the most glamorous of substitutions, but that brought about a little bit of a control back, I thought. And then Rangnick brings on Elanga for Rashford, and then all Bruno needs is one chance, and he was through, and he put Elanga through, and he Elanga mishit that shot, but Oblak was in bad position, and somehow United stole a 1-1 draw. I must say, Aniket, it was as awful as it was to watch, as uncomfortable as it was to watch. I think United come out with a slight edge.
Yeah, and it did seem that Elanga's comments post-match also made me believe that they were happy they salvaged a draw out of this, and now they're going to take it back to the theatre of dreams to settle scores. So obviously United is in an advantage back home. But what was interesting was, 11 players I saw, it seems 11 Man United players are out of sync. Everyone was having a poor day. And at that point, you question, did the manager get the tactics wrong, right? Like, because and this is a team sport, right? It's not an individual sport. So in an individual sport, if you're having a bad day, it's you're having a bad day. But here, 11 people everyone having a bad day does point fingers towards what the manager was trying to do in the first half. I think he read the game wrong, and Atletico seemed to play very well. Now I'm confused. Did Man United let them play very well, or were they actually playing very well? I'm still debating that in my head as we speak.
I think Atletico just played a really good game. That is one. But also at the same time, Man United just played awfully. It's just a question of, I don't know what, as you said, I don't know if it's a question of getting the tactics wrong. I don't know if it's a question of getting the execution wrong, because these things usually get sorted out in practice. But they're doing the basic things wrong, which was very, very surreal to me to watch. I can understand if Bruno has a bad day once in a while. It was, the law of numbers says that you're going to have a bad game at some point. But just the whole team, as you said, was just awful. Nobody could buy a pass. Nobody. Literally nobody. So you could, clearly the tactics were not working. I don't know why Rashford started, to be honest with you. He was coming off the bench, but I saw him start and I was like, why? Why is he starting? It doesn't make sense. I don't know if it's because of his experience or something, but I know I've been watching a lot of Manchester United games. I know just looking at Rashford these days that he's in really bad form. he was just running into 4 defenders with the ball instead of making a pass. So I don't know if it's a little bit of he's had his injury, he's come back, and all kinds of things with managerial changes and all of that stuff happening. So I don't know if it's that or not, but we just know that he's out of form. So there's no point starting him. The best players are Jadon Sancho and Bruno Fernandes, and Elanga has been really good. Now Greenwood is gone, so you that's why I think Rashford has got the nod. But it's you don't have to be a savant to know that Rashford is out of form. So I don't know why he started, and it showed, because good that there are 5 substitutions now in the Champions League. Otherwise, we would have been in even bigger trouble.
Yeah, and segueing from the first comments on managerial changes to something interesting that happened in Premier League was, I don't know if you saw Tottenham Hotspur and the Antonio Conte.
What a roller coaster
stuff, right?
Last couple of weeks for Tottenham Hotspur, man.
Right, they beat Manchester City, in my view, pretty convincingly.
It was a wonderful game, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and I really loved watching that game. And then you saw Conte come out and say, "Oh, it's the best team he's almost ever coached." I'm paraphrasing what he's saying, but something to that effect. And then they lose to Burnley, and Conte just, I think, loses it, and he stresses on this point where it's the first time they're losing 4 out of 5 games that they have played.
In the last 5 games, we lost 4 times. This is the reality. No performance, no space. The reality is this, that we lost 4 games in the last 5 games. I don't know, but I'm not so good to improve the situation. And for me, it's very frustrating.
When he talks about this 4 games in the last 5 about 20 times, and you could see he's super emotional, and he's almost asking Tottenham to sack him. I don't know what's happening. And then tomorrow, I think they're playing Leeds. So again, I think he has a talk with Daniel Levy, and they've sorted out. And I don't know, he's an emotional guy, but it seems like, I don't know what is going on. He was like almost asking for the boot. So
apparently they've had a high-level crisis meeting with Conte. I mean, I don't think Conte is going anywhere at this point, but he is a very emotional guy. He speaks things in public that you don't expect anybody to speak at that point in time. He always falls out. He speaks his mind pretty much, which is why I think he usually falls out with the management of the club every time, and which is why you see Conte not staying in a club for too long either, right? So, but I don't think Conte is going to go anywhere at this point. Tottenham would be much more wiser than sacking Conte for some reason.
It would be foolish to let Conte go.
Yeah, exactly. But it was after that brilliant game against City, they come and lose to Burnley at Turf Moor. So it was, it's, I guess in a way it's classic Tottenham, but it's bad. I also watched Arsenal beat the Wolves 2-1, which was a really cool game. Arsenal were like not in it. They went 1-0 down and they kind of came back and won it at the end. That was a good game, and as I speak this, I realize I think we are going to be a little outdated as when this episode comes out, if we keep talking about the games that went by. But I think the big thing is now that the Premier League race is now wide open. All of a sudden, you see Manchester City kind of dropping points. I think they had a draw and a loss in the last 5 games. So that means they've dropped 3 + 2, 5 points. And Liverpool have been on a rampage. I think they won 6-0 against Leeds, I think was their last result. They're on a winning streak right now. So 2-3 points separate Man City and Liverpool, both of them having played the equal number of games. So
I think they have to play each other as well. So
correct. So it is a 2-horse race. Yeah, it is a 2-horse race now, and it's getting close. Manchester City, for a moment there, were looking like they were going to run away with it, but it's not going to be the case with 12 games to go.
Yeah, and well, who doesn't want an exciting title race? So let's see how this goes. With that being said,
quote unquote, the greatest league in the world.
Well, it's tough to deny that at this point. I would have made maybe fought you in earlier seasons, but at this point, yeah, sure. So with that being said, I have been relegated to watching the Europa League.
Yes.
So
Let's talk about the Europa League, Aniketh.
This whole week I've been saying Champions League, we had such a good win, but then I'm correcting myself now to remind myself that we play in the Europa League.
By we, you mean Barcelona.
Barcelona played Napoli, and so the first leg was a 1-1 draw, and that was at Camp Nou, and now we traveled to Italy, and the game ended in a aggregated score of 5-3 over 2 legs, where Barcelona won convincingly. They actually had a very good game, which made me feel excited. They brought some sense of excitement in me after a long and tiring week. So it was a good Thursday in that sense to see Barcelona play well. So our signings have seemed to work. But then people are super excited about how great we've played. But then I also want to remind folks that, hey, it's been 3 games now, so there's a lot more to do. So it was a good game. It's good to see Xavi Hernandez get his tactics right. It's good to see the new signings in effect. So we had Aubameyang, Frankie de Jong was the man of the match, but Aubameyang, Adama Traore, and Ferran Torres were actually starting this game, and they seemed to be very effective. So now they have 6 goals and 6 assists among these 3 new signings.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good because Barcelona, you can say that their DNA has passing to them. They can, the guys who come out, just to call out names, Pedri, Gavi, the La Masia products are fantastic in the midfield. They're to look forward. I think they're the next crop of players everyone wants to look towards. But what we've, I think, earned is also vertical in the game. Like we have Aubameyang, who's really fast, Ferran Torres and Adama Traore. And you can see that very uncharacteristic first goal we scored, which is from a counter-attack. And Jordi Alba actually finishing the goal for us on the right side. So it was pretty interesting. It was a good game. I don't want to get my hopes up, but I do hope for a good season for Barcelona from here.
I think you have to, with a rebuild like this, you have to temper your expectations a little bit, because I know I've been there quite some time now with Manchester United. So when the rebuild is on, you need some patience. So it's hard to expect anything, earth-shattering at this point in time. They still gave up 3 goals, which means that there are still some questions at the back. But again, it's a work in progress. They're like all of these players are new. The manager is new. So yeah, I think as long as they finish qualifying for the Champions League at the end of this season, I think that's a good result for them.
Yeah, and I must add 3 very crappy goals. So it is. I think none of those goals deserve to be scored. I mean, they were given by errors mostly, all of them.
Yeah.
So, which is characteristic, right? We know how to go front, but it's tough to keep a clean sheet. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think we should move on to the Wriddhiman Saha story, which I really want to talk about a little bit, Aniketh, if you don't have anything else.
No, I'm good. I'm actually curious to learn more about the Wriddhiman Saha incident.
Okay, so to lay some context, Wriddhiman Saha, it was announced that he was not going to be part of the test squad coming up this year. India don't play a lot of tests this year. I think they play only 3 test matches this year. So Rahul Dravid spoke with Wriddhiman Saha and let him know that he was not going to be in contention for the selection, at least because Rishabh Pant is now the number 1 wicketkeeper for in the test matches, and Wriddhiman Saha, with his age and just India only having 3 test matches this year, Rahul Dravid had a tough conversation because he spoke about this in the media as well. He said he spoke with Wriddhiman Saha and said, look, with your age, with India only playing 3 test matches this year, and you not being the number 1 test wicketkeeper anymore, you're not going to be in contention. Which is, I think, fair. That conversation needs to be had. So
and I think they want to also give youngsters a chance, right?
Correct.
To play the backup wicketkeeper.
Correct. Which makes sense totally. And Rahul Dravid had this conversation with him, and Wriddhiman Saha is not going to be in contention for Test cricket anymore. After that happened, apparently according to Wriddhiman Saha again, he posted a tweet and said, after all my contributions to Indian cricket, this is what I face from a so-called quote-unquote respected journalist. And he shared a screenshot of a WhatsApp chat, or not a chat, but it was just a one-sided conversation from the journalist to him, asking him to do an interview with him. So the screen and the WhatsApp chat clearly shows that the reporter is asking him to give an interview. He says it's going to be good, and then he says, if you want to be democratic, then I won't push for an interview. And he's kind of egging him on and saying they chose one wicket keeper, whoever is the best. You try to choose 11 journalists, which is not the best according to me. Choose whoever can help the most, quote unquote. And then there's a missed call from him. So Saha never responds by this. Saha never responds to his text, and you can see that there's a missed call on there as well. And then the journalist again says, "You did not call. Never again will I interview you. I don't take insults kindly, and I will remember this. This wasn't something you should have done." So it is like a veiled threat to him, which is like very weird to see. Now there is a lot of speculation as to who that respected journalist was. I obviously say respected again in quotes. There is an alleged name.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm very curious to know, do you have any idea who this respected journalist is? Because I've been reading reports. I don't know. I have actually no idea because I don't follow this story so closely. But I've been reading reports of this journalist being very close to the Indian team and, having access to a lot of players during the previous captain and coach's term as well. So I just want to know, is there any guesstimate?
No, yeah, I know. No. Yeah. We know it's everybody. Well, according to most of the reporting that I've seen, it is pretty obvious who the respected journalist is. Now, this name has come up before. I think I've brought this up before. Again, I should use the word alleged because nothing has been proven yet. And Saha has said that he's not going to reveal that name because he doesn't want to affect the reputation or the livelihood of that journalist. Now, he's allegedly Boria Majumdar. Now, if you've known Boria Majumdar, he's been around the creating circles for some time now. He's seen as being very, very close to the inner circle whenever the Indian cricket team travels. Now, we've spoke a lot about how it's all about access with sports these days, especially in cricket, which is so walled off, right? So if you have access, that means you are in. And not many people get that opportunity, which means that you have a lot of power in your hands, right? Because you have this access with all of these top players. Now, this journalist is seen as close to being very close to Saurav Ganguly. So there is that whole thing going on. So he wields a lot of influence. Apparently, he is allegedly responsible for getting players good contracts with commentary, with doing commentary stuff, with getting them sponsors, and so on. So apparently, he wields a lot of power. Which I think is very apparent in his texts with Saha,
Tonality.
right? Yeah. There's just the tone of it, you know that he's speaking as if he's in a position of power, but he's just a journalist. So he's asking him for this interview, but he never got it. And then once he didn't get it, or once he knew that he was not responding, he's resorting to insults and saying, "Hey, you're what do you say?" He won't take to insults very kindly, which is just, I don't know what to say. But
and I think to add to this, sorry for interjecting, but I think everyone's now thrown a hat into this, right? So I seen that one thing was that according to Saha, that Ganguly had actually spoken to him and told him that he wouldn't be dropped from the team after his performance against New Zealand. And then,
which is not surprising to me, Aniket, because if you now I'm just piggybacking on what Sharda said in our conversation about Ganguly and Virat Kohli and the BCCI. Ganguly is an everybody's man. I'm not surprised that he said, "Oh yeah, I will take care of you," because that's the way Ganguly is. But I don't think he has any say in the selection, right? It's the chief selector along with the captain. But he said, as long as
exactly,
and yeah.
That's my point, right?
Charge, yeah, he said, as long as I'm in charge, you're going to be fine. I mean, which is, fair. That's how Ganguly
it could also be seen as a confidence-giving measure, right? Like,
exactly.
You don't take this literally. But then I said this because this is one aspect of it, and then I see the previous Indian coach Ravi Shastri also talk about an investigation has to be launched into this, and he urged the president to investigate who this journalist is, which is very ironic after what all you've said, because this is clearly a journalist who's been in the room while Ravi Shastri was there, I'm pretty sure more than once.
Yes.
Right? And now once you step out, it's rather convenient to come out and say.
Yeah. There's this also the whole thing about, this journalist, this alleged journalist is apparently seen being very close to Ganguly, because both of them are Bengali and all they go a little they go far back. Now, Shastri and Ganguly have historically not been on the same page, right? So there is that whole thing playing into this as well. So it is, as you said, it is very convenient for Ravi Shastri. But if it was, I think, even if he was the coach right now, if Saha came out and said this, I think Ravi Shastri would have been in support of Saha. I don't think he would have stayed silent. But there's also this whole factor playing in that he's seen close to being Saurav Ganguly, and that comes with its own set of dynamics, right? So
exactly. So everyone's throwing a hat into this problem, and I think Saha has been caught in the crossfire, I believe. So I think he's taking it from both sides now. It's actually rather sad that I'm pretty sure it's tough to take a negative thought of being dropped from the team, right? It by itself is a very difficult thing to digest. Yeah. And on top of that, you're subjected to all this, and then people piggybacking off your problem to settle, unrelated scores. It's very sad and rather unfortunate.
And which is what happens when your access is so limited with these cricketers, right? Once a journalist finds his way through, or his or her way through, this is what happens, because that particular journalist then has a lot of power, because he has something that most 99% of the other journalists do not have, which is access to these cricketers. If this alleged journalist turns out to be the actual person, then I won't be surprised at all, because everything that he does is just so cringy to me. I brought this up a few times before as well. Man, he wrote this autobiography, Sachin's book, autobiography with Sachin, which is just awful to read. It's just one of the poor document. I don't know if you've read his autobiography or not, but it's just awful reading. It's just so badly put together. I'm sure the book did well, because it came right after Sachin retired, so it was always going to do well. But the book itself was just a thing to forget. But again, as I said, this is what happens when access is so limited. So I don't think this is going to happen, but the ideal case would be to have, give journalists some access, man. Where is the profile of a good player these days? You always have talk to the family members or talk to some friends to get a proper profile, except for the player. So yeah, this is what happens, which is overall a sad story, but we should probably remember Wriddhiman Saha as one of the greatest, not one of the greatest, but one of the greatest glovemen, I should say. Not batsman, he was an okay batter, but as a wicketkeeper, I think he was exceptional behind the stumps. He was one of the better wicketkeepers that we've had.
For sure. And just to add to your point, right, about access journalism, I think it's a term used, as this term is called access journalism, where you're getting all your interviews, everything, just because you have access, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they shows that the more power you get, right, it kind of tends to blind you. And you see this in different fields. Like, this is just an example of what someone can pull in the field of journalism, but you see this with politicians, you see this through the spectrum with CEOs of companies. And that's why they say that democratizing a process is the best way. Democracy is no way the best system, but I think it does bring the playing field much more level compared to the other forms of systems we've dabbled in.
Yeah, the good comes with the bad with the democracy, but if it's the way the current system is, it's only going to be bad. So
it's also the law of large numbers, right? You converge some way closer to an average. So with large opinions being involved, you converge closer to the average, if not even the exact average. So
exactly. If, by the way, if you want to look at how the BCCI functions, do listen to our episode with Sharda Ugra. We did a couple of episodes back. I think it was episode 13 or 12. One of those episodes. I lose count. How about that? But yeah, definitely check that out.
That's the first.
I know. Definitely check that out. I just want to briefly change topics a little bit and talk about NBA basketball. It's heating up because the All-Star game just concludes, which means that we are in the final third of the NBA season. The biggest story obviously coming out is that James Harden, who is the former MVP of the league, one of the top 10 players, not right now, but is a really big name, has been traded from the Brooklyn Nets to the Philadelphia 76ers. And the other way around, Ben Simmons, who's been sitting out the whole of the season because he was sulking, the Philadelphia 76ers sent him to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, one of the characteristics of the current day NBA basketball thing is that it has become like a high school where people change allegiances pretty quickly. It's like, okay, we change friend groups pretty quickly. I don't know if you did that. I think I might have done that once when I was in high school. But people change allegiances pretty quickly. If they see a very small sign of a team not doing well or team chemistry being wrong, the big names are now tending to sulk and take their ball home and saying that I'm not going to play. Now, Ben Simmons last year had a terrible playoffs. And he came in with a lot of criticism. The coach criticized him. The 76ers' best player, Joel Embiid, criticized him publicly.
I think we spoke about it too.
Yes,
we briefly touched upon it and how terrible his shooting game is.
Yeah, and now, so after that he kept sulking and said he did not initially report to practice, but then the 76ers said they're going to fine him pretty badly. I think he lost a few $1 million this year because he didn't show up. Then he showed up.
He did show up to one of the practices, I remember, and he showed up with earphones plugged in and track, and he was all over the place.
Yeah, he was playing with a mobile phone in his pockets as well. And then he got sent home. He never reported again. He said he didn't want to play, which means they fined him. And then after that, now I don't want to make light of any kind of mental health issues at all, but he very conveniently, I think in my mind, said he's not there 100% mentally, and he was seeking a counselor's help. After that point, nobody said anything, and just he got shut down. They were waiting because he was seen as such a quote unquote big player. The Philadelphia 76ers front office was just waiting on a good trade, and then it happened, man. Then other big names sulked and said he was not happy, or indicated, not him directly, but he indicated through various sources, leaked, and said that he was not completely happy with playing with Kevin Durant. I don't know why he would not want to play with Kevin Durant.
Harden was not happy with the Nets?
Correct, Harden.
Okay.
Because James Harden was completely unengaged for some time. He said he had this hamstring injury that was bugging him. It kept bugging him for a few months. I don't know what happened there. There was this one game he played against the Sacramento Kings where he was so disengaged. He was not coming back on defense. He was just playing he was extremely passive. This is very reminiscent of him when he was with the Houston Rockets and he wanted out of there. So disengaged. You could see that he was completely out of it. The trade finally happens, and now Harden is with the Philadelphia 76ers and Simmons is now a Brooklyn Net. So, yeah, as much as I love watching NBA basketball, this is the one thing that I kind of hate watching, because it's just this sulking and I don't want to play here. I just don't want to play here anymore. I want to take my ball home. I don't want to play here, and crying and cribbing, and it's just, I don't know. It's a bad look. It's good for Twitter and social media, I think, but in the long run, it's just bad for NBA basketball.
I don't know if it's me being ignorant or this is how the society has converged, is that it seems off late a lot of the sulking has started. I think previously, back in the day, people would just bite the bullet, and you would not see. Maybe I'm ignorant and I didn't follow it that. I was younger. I didn't keep up with the news that closely. But it seems that off late this problem is much more in sports in general, right? We're talking about basketball, but you see a lot of players voicing their opinions and coming out and talking about not being happy. But then I understand when you're not happy, but then there's also a professional obligation. You signed a contract, right? You've got to do your job. You got to be committed to your job because you're obligated by a contract. So there is that thing that also comes into play.
And now what's happening is that the first sign of any problem, you immediately know, is he going to go? Is he going to go? Doesn't matter if he has 3 years left on his contract. Doesn't matter if he has 2 years left on his contract. There is, he's going to, if he's not happy.
For you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
sorry for interjecting. So this just popped up on my head. And like when you say trade, right? Is it similar to football, or is there also money exchange, or is it just like a flat on one-on-one trade between James Harden and Ben Simmons?
No, how trades work is you still have to match the money to a certain percentage. I think it's about 80% of the money you should match. So if you trade James Harden and Ben Simmons, you can't do a like to like because James Harden earns way more than Ben Simmons right now. So there will be other players involved, and there were other players involved. But this was the headline trade. James Harden and Ben Simmons were involved in the trade. But there are other, there will be some picks because that's the negotiation part of it. Some draft picks will be exchanged, but to match the salaries, you do send some players out.
Yeah, so I'm all about giving people a second chance, right? So I was skeptical about Aubameyang in coming to Barcelona, and now I wonder what are the Nets doing picking Simmons here? I mean, like,
well, they didn't have any choice because Harden clearly said that he wanted out. He was completely unengaged, and he clearly said that he wants to go to the Nets. So the only chance or the only thing they had left was
I think you mean Nets. 76ers. He wanted to leave to the 76ers, right?
Yeah. He wanted to leave the Nets to the 76ers.
76ers.
Now the only option they had was to open the line of contact with the Philadelphia 76ers and talk trades because he made it clear that he was not interested in this. So, which is why these days it's happening a lot with their all these star players are holding the teams hostage a little bit. And they are left with no option but to trade the player because if they know once his contract is up, they're going to lose him for nothing, right? So it's all a leverage game. So yeah, it's as good as it is for the social media folks. It's just awful for the basketball thing. I think it's just become at least in the off late has just been a musical chairs with star players. Which is why I really respect somebody like Giannis a lot. He's seen his fair share of failures, but he just stayed put, and won the championship last year. Which is why I love Steph Curry, which is why I love Nikola Jokic, who's one of my favorite players to watch, which is Denver. So yeah, I mean, all of this business of no, I don't want to stay here because this is the first problem that I encountered, and I don't like X person is just, I don't know, it's just awful.
Yeah, and well, I don't have anything more to add to that because Giannis is the man to look up to, I think. I think everyone aspires. Everyone is a fanboy of Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Exactly. So, anyway, I think having said that, we should. Do you have anything else to add, Aniketh, before we close?
No, I just want to remind the listeners to write to us in the podcast letters or that option that we have. So write to us with recommendations, with thoughts, and if you want to talk about something and you feel you can teach us something, please reach out, let us know. We'd love to learn.
Or if you want to participate in our episodes, please do write to us.
Let's get to the recommendations with this. So one of my recommendations is the book The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. So it's actually a wonderful book, and I've always wanted to tell Abhinandan this. I never had the opportunity, but he's actually knowing or unknowingly playing the infinite game with the way he founded News Laundry and the value system he's trying to put in place. So that's wonderful. Then my second recommendation is a podcast, which I've spoken about earlier, but the podcast called Finding Mastery, and it's run by Michael Gervais, who's a sports performance psychologist, and his interview with Angela Duckworth. So Angela Duckworth is a professor of psychology and neuroscience, I think. And she has a very famous book on grit, which is like a New York bestseller. And she basically was one of the first few people to study children and analyze data to isolate what predicts successful people. And it was found that it is not talent, it is not passion, it is not your ability to focus, but it is grit, your perseverance that actually a person has. And this is also closely related to what is called oh my god, I'm forgetting the word. What is the marshmallow? Yeah, so it's also called the marshmallow test, right? So where kids in Stanford were given a marshmallow where they could eat one now or wait for about, I think, 20 minutes or 2 hours. I don't remember the number. But if you waited, you would get one more. And it was found that these kids were tracked 20 years later, and it was found that the most successful were ones who could delay gratification, who could actually wait. and persevere. So she's done a lot of very interesting work on grit and studying how grit impacts people. So I would recommend listening to this podcast with Michael Gervais or reading the book Grit. Both are equally good. And the last recommendation is the battle of the US women's team to actually get equal pay. And this is an article by the New York Times.
Awesome. Great recommendations. My recommendation is going to be a News Laundry piece on the whole Wriddhiman Saha story. The headline reads, "Journalist threatens Wriddhiman Saha. Is Saha a small pawn in a big BCCI fight?" It is written by Chandrasekhar Luthra. I think we should have him on at some point. He's writing for News Laundry now.
For sure.
We should probably have him for some cricket-related stuff. The other recommendation is Netflix's Drive to Survive, which is coming up on the 11th of March. If you've not seen the first 3 seasons, I would highly encourage you to watch it. It's a brilliantly produced show. It's really well put together. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the 4th season because it has been one of the most thrilling seasons so far.
I'm actually undecided on if I'm going to watch this season or not. I loved the first 3 seasons. Please don't get me wrong. But this one, just because the way the season ended, there's this rebellious streak inside me that's still deciding if I should actually watch it or not. But I'm going to end up watching it. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up watching it too.
I'll watch it for sure. I think they're probably going to leave the Verstappen Hamilton thing right to the very end. But it will be...
That was made for Netflix. Like,
exactly.
That part was made for the series. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
Thank Mike Massey for that. Yeah, that is my final recommendation. And obviously, my every time recommendation is subscribe to News Laundry. Pay to keep news free. The election coverage is still going on. The team of News Laundry has been in various states. The team is now in UP. So please go to the website, click on the News Laundry Sena button, and you can top up the donations there. So please go to newslaundry.com and hit the subscribe button, and also hit that News Laundry Sena button.
Bye-bye everyone, take care until next time, and we leave you with the song Dada Ding that features all the Indian women athletes.
Wake up in the morning, all systems on go, cause I got goals and I won't take no for an answer. Got the grace of a dancer, the heart of a panther, I don't understand you. It puts in your vocab, I cannot quote that. I want this so bad, I cannot go back, I cannot back down, I will not give up. You versus me, huh? My only competition is myself. That's why I keep some trophies on the shelf. Never lazy cause it's bad for my health. Da-da-ding, da-da-ding, bada boom, bada bing. Now let's go. Let's go.
All the News Laundry podcasts are available on Stitcher, iTunes, and any other podcast platform.
Please subscribe to News Laundry. Help us keep news independent. To catch all our podcasts on news, pop culture, current affairs, and sport, visit newslaundry.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.